So now here, we human being, every human being, emotion is part of our life. But most of the emotion, which no proper basis, just emotion, these usually create more problem. Then the emotion, such as compassion, these things, based on reason. So now, I have some sort of contract among the scientists of quantum physics. Now, quantum physics, some experts, they say things appears, material thing, appears existence of objectively. But if you go deeper level, then nothing exists as appears. And go deeper way, then you see nothing, what's the identity. Appears something independent. Go deeper, everything particle. Then also you see, there are some scientists say, they finally, the mental conception, mental projection, you mentally, identify something. Otherwise, objectively, nothing exists that way. So one Indian great was a scholar, Rajaramana. Rajaramana once told me, quantum physics in the West, something new. In this country, in India, over 2,000 years already developed. And then he recites some verses of Nagarjuna. Everything interdependent. There is nothing objectively exist. So I feel quantum physics, you see, if we use thinking that way, according to quantum physics, then all the negative emotion, such as anger, fear, on the basis of appearances, go deeper, the people or object which you feel fear, go deeper, not as appears something solid, something independent, no. So all these negative emotion, which based on appearances, is no foundation. Other hand, karuna, compassion, you see, a kind of emotion, but based very much based on reality. So those positive emotion, we can, increase through reasoning, through meditation. Those harmful emotion, no proper basis, just on the appearances, like that. So that's quite encouraging or hopeful. All the negative emotion, not proper basis.
Yes.
Positive emotion, the proper basis. So we can develop through training, through reasoning, positive emotion. The negative emotion, thinking more deeper way, no basis. Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful. Richie, there are many parts of this you might want to reflect the science on, and maybe it is also starting with the compassion training research and maybe moving back to some of the work and implicit bias around.
Well, Your Holiness, it's wonderful to be with you again. Just a few reflections, actually to start with the current pandemic. There was a paper published by Chinese scientists just a few weeks ago showing that 54% of the Chinese population has reported either moderate or very severe symptoms of distress from the coronavirus pandemic, more than half the population. So what many scientists are now describing is a pandemic of a mental health crisis that is associated with this terrible virus that we have today. And one of the problems that people face is uncertainty about when this will end, uncertainty about how they may actually be infected, if they might be infected. And one of the comments that you made, Your Holiness, you were, I'm not sure who it was that you're quoting, but there are certain things that we can control and other things that we can't control. And if we can't control them, we should not worry about them. But what we can control is our own mind. And what we see is that the messages of uncertainty and the messages of fear are having a very destructive effect on people. And it actually has a biological effect too. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but you brought up the racial tensions in the United States. It turns out that in the group of people between 35 and 45 years of age, Black people in America are 10 times more likely to die from coronavirus than white people. 10 times. And this is data that was collected from the beginning of February to June 20th, and just reported by the Center for Disease Control. So this is a serious issue that is not just psychological, but it gets, as we say, under the skin into our biology. And so I wonder, part of it is, I think, people's attention being grabbed or hijacked, we would say, by messages of fear. And I wonder if you can give us, Your Holiness, some wisdom. How can we control our mind to not be so influenced by these messages of fear and actually calm our mind in a way that would produce more equanimity and actually affect our biology?
Now this illness cause another thing. Coronavirus. As I already mentioned, those scientists, and particularly the medical scientists, you see, they still carry some research work. So that should continue. And this illness also due to certain virus.
Virus.
So similarly, this body also have the potential of the antidote. So I think the doctor, scientist still continuously research work. And then individual, I feel it's a mental state. Also, I think some connection. The mental state, calm, and self sort of confidence, maybe some effect, and too much fear. Then these virus also, you see, in a way, find the opportunity to create, multiply. Mental level, self-confidence, not much fear. And then I think the positive particle of this body more stronger. That I feel. And including some meditation. Usually, you see, we only talk the materialistic sort of culture or materialistic life. We only talking about 5 senses of organs. I think till because of the late 20th century, you see, people not much pay attention about mind. I think those scientists, especially like you, the brain specialist, you simply, you see, telling people, brain. Not much talk about.
We also tell them mind.
Now, I think, especially you, the later part of 20th century, now realize beside this brain, there is something which can affect our brain, including meditation, some effect, some change of brain. So that we call sixth mind. So meditation is the part of sixth mind. So, and then meditation, including the control of breathing. I usually practice that morning. You see, take and then keep here as much as you can. Then blow. So, such sort of practice gradually, you see, the ability of sixth mind increasing. So usually we just the 5 sense of organs, seeing, hearing, like that. They not thinking, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, just mind itself. Then on it, meditate. Few seconds, few minutes. And some my friend, even you see 3-4 hours. So then it increase the strength of sixth mind, ability of the sixth mind. Then, you see, we call meditation, shamatha meditation, and analytical. Once you see you gain some sort of what's the forces analyzed, channelized, right? Or analyzed the power of sixth mind, then analytical meditation, or we call vipassana, or further investigate everything, external things or particles, all sort of the meditation. You see, the Indian tradition, shamatha, vipassana, very useful. You see, that really increase the power of mind, and also, you see, increase sharpness of mind, like that. So this, I think, according to Indian tradition, secular way, not related with religious belief, whether accept religion or not, these are simply academic subject. training our mind and utilize the power of mind properly. Sixth mind. So you make, I think, a great contribution regarding besides brain, there is something which can affect brain. So I really believe, like you, and now more and more scientists now paying more attention about our emotion, about our inner world. In the past, just material, external thing. Now begin to research more our inner world, because all these anger, fear, all these are part of our sixth mind. So material thing cannot affect on that. So meditation, analyze the mind, and then you can develop conviction. All these negative emotion, no use, so we can reduce. Result, your mind become much more peace, much more stable. So the other day,
Your Holiness.
yes, yes.
No, sorry, please go on.
The other day, about this virus, they mention the kasa zizgambo
Bats.
ka
Bats.
ka
Bats. Bats.
kasa
Bats.
bats
No.
bats are
No.
bats you see carry this illness. Of course, you see some connection, maybe connection. I think all blame on bat. I think wrong. The bats, you see, no way to defend themselves. We human beings, you see, just a blame. They carry this problem, this problem. So the more research about mind, about emotion, and then change our emotion through reason, through analytical meditation. Not talking about God, not talking about Buddha, just simply you say how to bring a peaceful mind. So instead of blame kasa bats, we should or say the kasa just another
Point.
blame our own negative emotion much better. Then the question is how to reduce negative emotion. Negative emotion, the proper way to reduce negative emotion, not prayer, but analyze the system. Recently, you see some Chinese student who study quantum physics. Now they express, you see, as a result of study of quantum physics, you see, some kind of grasping the external object, something good, something bad, you see, very negative. So that is reduced. That is exactly the Buddhist psychology, ancient Indian psychology, also is mentioned that. So now you, as my longtime friend, we have more work to the education field about our emotion and how to reduce negative emotion and how to increase the positive emotion, these things, not touching any religion.
Yes. Your Holiness, I wanted to just mention that when we first began our dialogues through Mind and Life, the word compassion was not in any textbook of psychology in America, in the West. If you looked in the index, the word compassion was not there. And it is really through your inspiration that you have catalyzed a whole generation of scientists through Mind and Life that has begun to study how compassion and other forms of meditation actually affect our emotions in this way. And now there is thousands of scientific papers. And literally 20 years ago, there was zero on compassion. And so I remember the day in Dharamsala when we made a commitment to you that we were going to do everything we could to put compassion on the scientific map. And there's still much to learn, but it is really a testament to the inspiration that you've provided, that there is actually a field now of contemplative science and contemplative neuroscience. And one of the findings that we see that is relevant to an issue that we were talking about earlier is that even relatively short amounts of compassion practice can reduce implicit bias. And implicit bias is prejudice that is subtle. It is non-conscious. It's present in our demeanor, in our behavior toward members, for example, of racial outgroups, but we may not actually be aware of it ourselves. And that kind of prejudice or bias can be reduced through these practices. So it is something which has developed, and we're really making, I think, very good progress. But we still, I think, are faced with how we can disseminate this more widely and make these strategies available to everybody. So if you have any advice about how all of us, 7 billion people, can practice, one of the analogies that I sometimes use is that when human beings first evolved on the planet, none of us were brushing our teeth. And today, everyone brushes their teeth. Almost every human being on the planet. And it's not part of our genes, it's something we learn. So can we all learn to cultivate compassion?
Right. I always emphasize the existing education, you see, so-called modern education, is come from West. So no concept, no idea about mind. So now education should include education, beside education of matters, and also, you see, should combine education of mind, education about emotion. So like, you say, hygiene of physical, similarly, hygiene of emotion as an academic subject, not a religious subject or next life or heaven. No, simply how to build a society day by day, happier, friendly, peaceful. So hygiene of emotion, you see, should include in our education field. So that's lacking. The modern education very much oriented about material value. When we talk about mind, then sometimes we felt that's a religious subject. No, actually not. So therefore, hygiene of physical, similarly hygiene of emotion, in order to explain that, then you see different kind of destructive emotion. Here, ancient Indian tradition, very detailed explanation how much destructive emotion, what kind of emotion, because I cannot sort of use the English now here, Tibetan, 조심제, any 심중, 배는 심중을 주서지, 셰인도산에 다들 and learn 도다 망고스 다양도가.
So, for example,
심중, any 심중을 주서지.
For example, in the Indian psychology, we see the distinction made between primary awareness itself and the various modalities that are functionally defined. These are referred to as mental factors. For example, one of the texts, Abhidharma, lists 51 such mental factors. Each of them are distinctly defined from the point of view of their functions.
So it is quite useful. You see, some ancient Indian text, you see, mention these things. And now we should take these academic subject, not religious subject. And of course, not for Buddhist subject, Buddhism. No, nothing. You see, the original source is some Hindu tradition, some Buddhist tradition, some Jain tradition, but that's something different. But we are trying to take these education subject. So I think modern education about our inner world, very much lacking. Now that we must sort of start a new text for education from kindergarten level, then gradually up to university level. You see, because we have the subject to study small particle and then how to grow these big trees like that. So similarly, the mind also, you see, like that, small one small sort of mind sometimes create much sort of sophisticated mind. That sometimes very harmful, sometimes very helpful. So these is like external thing. It is we study detail. Now this more poison, so more dangerous. So we try to avoid. And this something useful. So we particularly, you see, we especially should pay attention for grow. Similarly, our inner world, our mind, there are certain sort of emotion useful and how to. So these positive emotion, worthwhile, we should pay more attention to increase. Then certain emotion very harmful, so we should reduce that. That not like physical, but its own causes or emotional level. So we should, in our education field, we should include, you see, these things. The other day, now my one commitment is try to revival of ancient Indian thought, Indian tradition, mainly ahimsa, non-violence. Non-violence very much related with mind, that's karuna. In this country, 2,000 years ago, already developed ahimsa, karuna. So Buddha Dharma itself, part of that. So the modern Indian education very much was based on Western materialistic education. Now India should combine the ancient Indian knowledge about mind, about emotion, and modern education, India have the ability and opportunity to combine these two things. I often is now telling my Indian friends, so the essence is existing education is not adequate to bring a happy person. So now we should, now here, the scientist, I think you have some authority to mention, to raise these questions. If I say, oh, Dalai-Lama monk, so naturally, you see these, these view. The scientists say, oh, then people pay more attention, oh. So in reality, in reality, existing modern education is not adequate for, as I mentioned earlier, you see physical health, with that material thing, and then mental health, nothing mentioned. They always you see, depend on religious faith. Then religion, I respect all religion, but much religion just based on faith. The Buddhist religion or Hindu Sangha philosophy or these and Jain, Indian tradition, you see, quite a lot because you see they in their religion, the practice of shamatha, practice of vipassana there. So some also the explanation about mind there. But then I think maybe I'm Buddhist, so little prejudice, maybe. But look, even Buddhism, the Pali tradition, what Buddha says recorded and not much analyzed. So Buddha himself, you see, express, oh, my follower should not accept my teaching out of faith, but rather thorough investigation. So Nalanda tradition, then you see, use his advice, and then we extensively use logical approach. Even Buddha's own word come, we just raise question, why Buddha say that? And if you see Buddha's own word, through analyze, through logical approach, if we find contradiction, then we have right to reject Buddha's own word. So many, that Pali tradition, not much, and the Sanskrit tradition. And actually in Nalanda, I think education sort of center, not just to say monastery. So number of Nalanda master, you see, they study extensively logic, Parman, like Dignac, Dharmakirti, and then they also see Nagarjuna, Buddhapalita, then particularly the Kasachuti, Umajuga, Chandakirti, Chandakirti. You see, these Nalanda master, so when they explain about Buddha Dharma, always use reason. So if through reasoning, Buddha's own word, some contradiction, then they reject. So that is something, Kasuta, something unique, I think good. So I think we Tibetan, in the 8th century, although Buddhism introduced Tibet 7th century, then 8th century, Tibetan king, you see, he advise, he invite the Nalanda master, that's Shantarakshita, great logician, great philosopher. So some of his writing, we use textbook. So since he introduced Buddha Dharma according to Nalanda tradition, Sanskrit tradition, so we Tibet over 1,000 years, we study rigorously about logic. So now today, among the Buddhist brothers and sisters, I think Tibetan Buddhists who study these things, and then you see they are thinking always logical. Therefore, we develop also the special relation with scientists. So science also, you see, investigation, reasoning, not belief. So Nalanda tradition also is not belief, not faith, investigating. So now our conference, science, as a minor science, now we develop. So I think at least we made some sort of contribution. And then within Buddhism, since many Burmese Buddhists, Thai Buddhists, is quite often used to come to see me. So since we become very close friends, so sometimes I teaching them, you only Pali tradition, just based on Buddha's word. So you have like no teeth. If something hard come, we Nalanda tradition, we utilize, because we study logical. So you see, we have our teeth, no matter the hard subject. We can do that. So therefore, the Shantarakshita, wonderful scholar and practitioner. And his, also under his guidance, we Tibetan, you see, study Nalanda tradition. You see, firstly, myself also, you see, 6, 7-year-old already started memorizing, learn by heart, those root texts. And the Kirtugre, Ngodojan Sungore, Umujugu Sungore, and Kashe, and the Kasure, Kalakache, Ngodojan Jansu, Shikta Drama Jansu. These should the Umujugu Jusu Tasabego Jus.
These are two important texts that children, as young monks, have to memorize, and they're quite tough. So the first one is called the Ornament of Realization. So the Tibetan word "mondogen," ornament, is some So because the student has been struggling so hard, so started getting lice in the body. So the student said, I've been memorizing this ornament text and my body has been ornamented. And then the second text is to enter or engage, entering the middle way. And here too, So the second text is actually a combination of long and short verses. So it's even harder to memorize because it's uneven. So the student was saying that, and the term has, the title of the text is Umala Jukpa, which is entering the middle way. And the Tibetan term Jukpa, enter, has a double meaning. So it says that, entering this text, memorizing this text, instead of entering the monastery, it looks like I may have to exit.
So Your Holiness, I want to bring us to a important question. You have given us such beautiful teachings in this time. What would you say to our leaders in nations around the country, around the world? What would you say to our young people who are protesting and desiring change and who are struggling against systems that they see as oppressive around the world?
Yes, world always changing, moving. Now with education, including knowledge about science, you see, I think today's world, I think 100 years ago, much change. In 20th century, become century of violence. Now, 21st century, I think many people, you see, really now serious thinking. Whenever we find difficulties, you see, previously, then we just touch the gun. Now, in 21st century, when we find some disagreement, we think dialogue. So I usually, you see, describing now this century should be century of dialogue. Whenever we find some disagreement, some differences. So after all, the previous centuries, many people kill through warfare, but nobody win or eliminate all so-called their enemy. First World War, Second World War, still, you see, the different people who have sort of actually created some problem, it still remain. So therefore, now the only thing is dialogue. So now here, my main sort of desire, or my aim is eventually through education and try to promote the spirit of dialogue, and on the basis of oneness of 7 billion human beings, we have to live side by side. There's no use war, no use weapon. So this world now should be demilitarized world. Now all these weapons, now you see, waste of money. Like nuclear weapon, we spend a lot of money, but nobody dare to use. Useless now. So weapon, you see, no use. So we should develop demilitarized world. Then any problem through dialogue. And for that, we need self-confidence, believe truth, honest, a wider perspective, not just thinking my nation, but entire world.